I really hate comparing games, and I understand when other people don't like it as well. It's not fair, and I get that. But with that in mind, I have to say, Hogwarts Legacy really just reminds me in so many ways of The Witcher 3, at least on the Nintendo Switch, both of them being on the Nintendo Switch. I'm Nima. Let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy and why you should probably think about picking it up while it's on sale. But before we get into that, I have to ask you guys to please hit that like, subscribe button, share, do all that stuff. And if you care, at the end of this video, I'll tell a rather humorous story that something of that happened to me. Anyway, let's get back into Hogwarts Legacy. I think we should establish one thing though, and that is if you have any other way to play it, you should probably play it that way. And, PlayStation, Xbox, I think they're all discounted right now. So you're going to get the same deal either way. And that being that right now for the next 7 days, maybe 6 days, you have, I think, 40% discount on Hogwarts Legacy. I know I picked it up at Walmart for $39.99. And on the eShop and pretty much everywhere else, it's the same deal. Like WB Games, it's a really good sale going on right now. And again, you have it basically until about Christmas or so. Now, I have to say that I do have those other systems, but I just prefer playing in handheld. It's crazy how much I will trade to be able to play portably, and it just works better for me. I've said that basically since I started the channel, and know that a majority of my gaming experience is always handheld. So that's also what I'm going to be talking about is handheld OLED model version of the game instead of being docked. So, if there is some discrepancies, I apologize. I do realize that when you put this thing into dock mode, you lose some graphical clarity. So, just keep in mind that when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the handheld experience. And first up, I have to say that, it's not an amazing port, but it is a really good port. There's definitely going to be some things that pop out, all right? Like, you're going to be running down the hall and you're going to outrace the computer, so to speak, where you'll just run into a door that won't open and there'll be a little symbol saying wait, basically. Or you'll be running through this massive castle and a student will just pop out right in front of you. Things like that are going to happen. That's just what happens with the Switch, and especially with the port that I don't think we ever believed could have even popped up on this system. But to be fair, the actual gameplay is really fun, and most of my joy has been just experiencing the castle, experiencing Hogsmeade, the architecture. And even though it's not perfect, and I could definitely say, I'm sure it looks so much better on the PS5 and there's so much more life in it, I've still really enjoyed my experience playing it. And I have to be honest, watching Harry Potter again, playing the game in handheld, it just feels right, and I think that they did a really good job of bringing this game to the Switch. Graphically speaking, it's not the best, but it is still really good. I just wanted to get the graphics and the performance out of the way because I know that that's such a huge thing for a lot of people, especially with this game. And I'm telling you, there's a lot you can overlook, or there's a lot you can nitpick about. And, either way is fair. I get it. And that's honestly why I say, if you're going to pick it up, I'd pick it up now, because I don't think it's actually worth the full value. If you were going to pay the full price, then you might as well pick it up on a different system because it's not as good. All right, that's fair enough, right? But if your main gaming console is the Switch, like myself, then yeah, this is a great time to grab it because you're not having to pay that steep fee. And I'll definitely say this, even if you for some reason can't pick it up right now, I would wishlist it and not buy it at full price. WB games usually do go on sale, and the longer they've been out, the more sales they go on. So, either way, I'm going to say don't pick it up at full price. But the story of the game, too, I think is really compelling, and there's so much going on. There is so much life in this game. And that is one thing I really appreciate about it. All the students have different side quests and backstories, and there's all this interaction with them. I can get where some people were a little upset that it wasn't more of a life sim. Because let's be honest, all of us that grew up with Harry Potter, that was the dream to basically live inside of this castle, this magical castle with all these people and experience day-to-day life and, maybe have friends, date, do all that stuff. And there is a little bit of that in this game, obviously not the dating part and stuff like that, but there is some resource management and some crafting and just elements of it. I would love to see them take this further and make it more of a life sim at some point, basically use what they already have and just extend upon it. But honestly, too, this game is a really good action game. I have to say, if it underperformed as an action game, I would definitely have a problem with it, just because they could have done something else with it, but the actual action is really good. The storyline is really interesting, and it basically starts off with you being a fifth-year student who's also basically a first-year student. You've never been there before, but at your age, you're having to go in as a fifth year. And you can see ancient magic, which no one else can see. And right from the get-go, this game starts off with a lot of craziness happening. And due to your abilities and some stuff that happens in the very beginning of the game, you're wanted by some nefarious characters, not only for your ability, but for some things that you may have seen or some secrets that you may now hold. There is a lot going on, and I think that's what makes this game so good, is that there is a lot of depth. Like, they had a good idea of what kind of story they wanted to tell, and they do it really well. Now, I will say that the combat was something that took me a little bit of time to get used to. When you first start the game, it's actually really easy, but as you progress, it gets more and more difficult. One of the things for me was just the controls. So to basically do a basic attack, you have to hit the right trigger, or RZ or RZ, whatever you want to call it. I've always just called it the right trigger. But you have to do that, and then at the same time, your spells are also holding right trigger and then either X, Y, B, A. At either one, they'll have their own spell. Some of them are more utilitarian. Some of them are more in the way of like breaking shields and things of that nature, which is really important because as the game progresses, a lot of other magic users put, shields and barriers on themselves that you have to take down before you can actually attack them. This, for me, took just a little bit of time to get used to, because I was kind of stumbling over my own fingers and then forgetting what was the actual attack, and I would casting Luminoso and lighting the place up instead of actually attacking my enemy. But you do get used to it, and this is also some of the things that I really appreciate with the combat and how it reminds me of Witcher 3. So you do have like a spider sense kind of thing when you're about to be attacked, and you can easily dodge out of the way. Mastering this and also your offensive combat might take a little bit of time to get used to, but once you do, it just feels really good and really responsive. And you actually feel like a powerhouse when you're able to put all of that together. And honestly, like when they start bringing in all of those different things, like the barriers, the attacks, the multiple enemies, it does feel a little overwhelming. But like I said, you'll get the hang of it and you'll feel like a badass wizard. One other slight gripe I have with the game is the fact that the castle and really a lot of the map is huge. It is massive. So when you're trying to track a quest, it will give you your best, route to get to where you want to go. But sometimes it gets confused. And so you'll be like walking one way and the line that's telling you where to go will like just pop up behind you and go the opposite way. And you find yourself sort of lost for a little bit. Now, it's not a huge problem and it only happened a few times. And thankfully, I had already started to get used to the castle just because I was kind of looking around anyway. And so I got used to it. But there was like 2 quests in there that I was a little bit irritated because I was like, where am I supposed to go? Like, just tell me. And it couldn't do that. So, that's something to keep in mind. I don't know if that happens on the other versions, but it definitely happens on the Switch version. But ultimately, all the charm, all the magic, if you will, of Harry Potter is definitely here in this game. Hogwarts Legacy is a great representation of that world. And honestly, I absolutely adore it. If I was going to give this game a score, I would give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. And yes, that is with the caveats of it's not performing as well, the graphics aren't as great, but for the Switch, it looks and performs pretty good, and something that I think most Switch users will be okay with, because they know the Switch at this point. I do want to take a minute or so to talk about another WB game that I've been going back and forth on how I could cover it, because it is one of the most broke games I've ever played that I keep playing more and more of. That is Mortal Kombat 1. Now, honestly, I don't want to get a strike against me, so I'm not going to show any gameplay or anything like that over it, but I just have to say that this is another game that if you love Mortal Kombat, you should definitely get it. The story is awesome. It's really fun to play through, and the actual combat, there's no issues with, but the amount of just weird junk that happens in the Switch version of the game is insane. Like, while you're trying to play through the story, again, if you are a person who loves Mortal Kombat, you'll really appreciate the story, but the screen just lags out and cuts out sometimes. It is so bad during like any of the animation sequences. Sometimes when you're going to pick a character, it'll just take forever for the character to actually pop up. And when you do a fatality, your character just stands there for like 5 seconds if you put it in right. Like, if you didn't, then fine, whatever. But if you actually input the right buttons, your character just stands there, and then it finally starts. And yeah, this game is horrible, but I absolutely love it. Like, again, that comes from a very biased opinion of somebody who loves Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's been my thing. That's been my fighting game. And to be clear, the actual fighting is really good. Like, it responds really well, the combos work, everything seems to perform well, and I think that that's basically what they did, is they took all of their engineering ability and put it just in the combat, which is, I think, the smart thing to do, because it's still playable, it's just all the other stuff around it is pretty bad. But anyway, one last thing that I was just going to tell you guys, a little story that you may not know. So, I am a gambler. And yes, I gamble like on football and DraftKings and junk like that, but I also gamble with other things. See, I have this pair of pants that I absolutely adore, but they're really loose. They're like a knit type, breathable type pants that I just love. And I wear them when I'm inside a lot, and they feel great. But again, super loose. And usually when I walk around, I have to have one hand holding them up. Earlier, like right before we started this, I got a package from HelloFresh. And if you've never heard of them, it's basically like the IKEA of food. Like, they send you the ingredients, what to make, and kind of teach you how to do it, but that's it. And I appreciate that because I like cooking and I want to learn more aspects of cooking, and that's just a good way to do it. Don't worry, this is not a sponsored thing by HelloFresh. God, I wish it was. But anyway, I went outside to go grab that box, right? And both of my hands were on that box. There's usually a lot of heavy junk in there, and the pants started to fall. I jumped inside of my house and made it inside of the house, but my pants did not. They just say, luckily no one was around, but wow, that's an experience, I gotta say, going back into my room to find other pants to put on so I could go out to my front porch and pick up my other pants. Anyway, I just thought you guys would appreciate that. Love y'all. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.